writing scene in Fresno is so cool and so wonderful. So I'm really hyped today to introduce Jacob Reina. I actually graduated like right after him, and I think we've never spoken, but I do believe we follow each other on Instagram, which feels very Fresno to me. Jacob is the author of Purity of the Sky, a neo-romantic memoir set in Istanbul, Turkey, and published by Atmosphere Press in June of 2024, only a year after he graduated from Fresno State in December of 2023 with a bachelor's in English studies, which to me is absolutely like wildly impressive. That's such a good turnaround. Jacob also has had short stories and poems featured in New York Quarterly, Twisted Mind Literary, Free Spirit, Rougarou, Watershed Review, Allegory Ridge, Paper Dragon, and elsewhere, so a very long list. But Purity of the Sky is his first novel. However, it is not his last, as he's currently working on 2 sequels, which will be set mostly in Yerevan, Armenia, and the United States. Purity of the Sky is a really beautiful novel that focuses on the relationship between Jacob and his wife Nagar. In the memoir, the couple are separated by political and geographical distance, as Nagar is from Iran and Jacob is from Fresno, California. But they're able to reunite in the city of Istanbul. For too short a period of time, the city becomes their home, a foreshadowing for when someday in the future they're finally able to be together in America. This joy of unification and pain of eventual separation hangs over the novel in a cloud. And while the novel is deeply personal, it also delves into the political struggle for women's rights that occurred and is still occurring in Iran. This backdrop to Jacob and Nagar's relationship becomes even more prominent as the novel continues, and Jacob's fear for his wife's safety is poignantly painful. It was really wonderful to read. Here the personal cannot help but intertwine with the political, as love collides with money, grief with separation, with immigration, and reunification with both hope and fear for the future. Honestly, I could probably like go on forever because it's a really good book, but I'm an English major, we're very good at that. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to Jacob Reina.
So I'll be starting the section set in Istanbul in the month of January 2023 and ending with a really brief section like a flashback to our wedding night in Tbilisi, Georgia in April 2022. Taksim Square, if one does not know what the hell they are doing, can seem a long walk from Galata Tower. We eventually found out that this was not necessarily the case, but more of that later. For now, I should note that as the evening cooled down, our moods had improved, and so we didn't really mind hopping off the train early to walk the extra mile, mostly uphill and past one vicious guard dog just to get to the famous square. Taksim is a massive square with a giant white mosque. Also in the square are vendors that specialize in roasted chestnuts and bouquets of flowers, a Starbucks, hundreds of clothing stores, Turkish brands as well as foreign, restaurants and cafeterias, tourist agencies, hotels, cosmetic shops, and boutiques. Tens of thousands of people from every corner of the world walking around a maze taking photos, like ourselves, at a red construction paper and stringlet heart placed at the center of the square that said in slanted blue cursive letters, Istanbul 2023. Every time we tried to get our photo taken, another person rushed to the heart before us. There, one older woman had ordered her friend to take what seemed like a dozen photos of herself. While waiting, we eventually spotted a local man, a man we declared to be an amateur photographer, who agreed to take our photo before explaining in Turkish to the other people waiting that we had been waiting for quite some time longer. The people nodded, but the same lady kept having her photo taken. It was like the lady on top of Galata all over again. Our photographer muttered in English behind his grinning teeth for only us to hear, "Oh God, crazy lady, hurry up, hurry up." We went into the Starbucks because Nagar wanted to try a white chocolate mocha and whatever chocolate pastries I wanted to add on. While I was about to order, she said she'd go have a seat somewhere. I shrugged it off, but when I got our tray of drinks and pastries, Nagar was nowhere to be found. Tray in hand, I walked around the Starbucks, and not finding her still, I carried the tray with me out into the square. The agonizing thoughts of what might have happened. How did she disappear? Where did she go? Did she leave me? Did she take someone with her? Did someone take her? How did I lose her? Where did I go wrong? Looking around this square at the tens of thousands of passing people, I see families, couples, old and young. I see headscarves, long platinum locks, bald spots, curls tied in buns. I see 10,000 eyes with smile lines and sparks of kindness. The warm eyes of people who strive to do others good. Wherever there are good people, there are surely roaches scattering around, half noticed and hurried, as I wonder some spell cast by a rodent-faced warlock in a bedsheet cloak. I cannot see them, but I can always feel their eyes. The mosque's helmet-shaped dome and lance-like minarets are so massive they cast shadows that create a near-perfect line down the middle of the square, as though the sun herself wants to distinguish the haunted from the free. In a storm of people coming and going, Nagar should have never been missed, with her large brown eyes shining like wet autumn leaves reflecting a pre-evening's light. I'm searching for her hair, cut short at her shoulders, combed smooth and straightened in its natural black, but the only blonde remaining in the ends. And I'm searching for her chin and cheeks that have been filled by some doctor, making them tighter slightly, thus emphasizing her sleek half smirk. Above all, I'm searching for her graceful gait, nearly the exact opposite of my clumsy shuffle, a pigeon-toed steps I've never in any circumstance been able to unlearn, even while wandering around this square with a tray of coffee and flaky sweets in my hands. She isn't even wearing that dark magenta coat. I see the seagulls circling and dodging minarets. Now they're soaring above the square and over the roof of a building I've already checked. 15 minutes later, feeling heavy with gloom, I went back into Starbucks and asked the counter to pour our drinks into cardboard cups to go. The well-meaning barista tried to amuse me with a joke. "It will cost you extra," he jeered as I frowned. I carried the cardboard cups to the back of the cafe, where I figured I could have charged my phone at some measly metal table and then tried to reach Nagar. But exactly there, just behind a tiny nook beside the restroom, but hidden as an unnoticeable corner, I found her sleeping with her head on the table. "You were here the whole time? I was terrified. I thought you left me or got lost or kidnapped." "Really? Honey, I'm sorry. I got so fucking sleepy. I thought you knew where I was." We went outside and sat on a concrete bench across from the mosque, drank our coffees, ate our treats, made up with smiles, then went down Istiklal Avenue, the long lane lined with multi-story fashion shops. A month before our trip, a bomb killed 6 people here, wounding 81 others. And we made note of this while storming down the street, both suspicious of and wary for all the tens of thousands of passing eyes. They could have been any of us, those unsuspecting 90. At any given time, your life can be taken in the name of some cause, leaving your loved ones in endless grief. After passing a few buildings, we decided to eat doner kebabs at a large cafeteria. We shopped around for gifts for our brothers, became quite cold as the nightfall darkened, and decided to end the day with a long walk home. A million little stars came out to watch over Turkey, because the sun was preoccupied warming California. We found the metro, my first ever experience on the train underground. Nagar rides these regularly, living near the dead center of LA-like Tehran. I followed her lead, excited, despite her panicked search for the right train to board for Fatih. With help from random locals who themselves sought help from Google Translate, we found the right train and jumped off near Ataturk Bridge. In the middle of this same bridge that we traversed the night before, a homeless boy sat entirely alone. We gave him a bag of chestnuts that we purchased from the vendor but didn't finish eating. He took them without a word and instantly shoveled them into his mouth. It was Nagar's idea, as was the idea of giving chips to the boy, as was the idea of giving khachapuri to 2 Romani women who were starving near midnight on the streets of Old Tbilisi on the night of our wedding. For all her cynicism, for all her manners that often strike others as rude, there is an extreme gentleness that I have seen many times, and it has allowed me to look at this rudeness from a totally different angle, as a rare form of honesty that needs sweet words to sting a little less. In the room, the television played. Almost all the channels were news networks in a variety of languages. Turkish, obviously, but also Russian, Arabic, French, Persian. We turned on the Persian news station, which was based outside of Iran. "Who's that?" I asked, upon seeing some footage of a man giving a speech. "He's a critic," she said. "Do you think he's better?" I asked. "He's more human," she said. I studied the man's face, hidden by dark sunglasses, because he was speaking outside in a seated position as the sun beamed down. His hair was covered by a white turban and a khaki hood. He had a missing tooth and a long silver beard streaked mildly with youthful black locks that provided an illusion as to how his hidden hair must surely appear. Between each phrase that he launched at those in power, he smiled, but it was a sad smile, like one stoic during grief who still feels the hopeless sense of cruel betrayal. It was as if he was still trying to recover from some spell cast by a rodent-faced warlock in a bedsheet quilt. "He has more humanity," Nagar corrected herself. "But I can't trust traditional people ever again." Then some clips were shown to highlight the protest. Hidden in the crowds would be a few shadowy figures sent specifically to stir up trouble and fear. They wore plain clothes and carried messenger bags, from which they would pull out some weapon made highly illegal to the country's ordinary citizens. What the cameras had captured, what the news station had paused and circled, was the use of this weapon against the protesters by the mysterious shadowy figures who then ran away. So there they were, scattering around. The story changed to memorialize the fallen women. In combination with the photos that the news network displayed, several names and faces of real martyrs came to mind. Many shown, very many widely known, and others who went missing or whose stories never reeled. Gina, Mika, Hanane, Sarina, Hadis, Mona, Fershte, Daria, Yalta, Negin, Aida, Shiru. They were detainees, heroes among men, and grandparents, and even young children. There were many facing execution, to be added to the endless list of the politically condemned. Names like Jamshid, Mehdi, Majilis, Kian, Nilofar, Hasti, and some thousand or so others. Names all belonging to real-life heroes, male or female, young or old, already dead or still half living. I shuddered at the sickening thought. Please don't ever add Nagar to the list. There were people being interviewed. There were the anchors talking. Everyone on the screen was an Iranian at heart, either in the land or torn from it, mourning it or fighting for it back. And they all spoke about the passing years with heavy, exhausted eyes. "Nagar?" "Yes," she whispered, her eyes still glued to the crying people on the screen. "Could you tell me in English what everybody's saying?" "Yes, honey," she sighed. "I forgot it's too hard for you. Right now, this person is saying, there are times when my tongue doesn't want to work. There are times when all I can say is the maybe foolish phrase, 'I love you so much.' And there are times when even this seems an ineffective declaration. Love existing in a world plagued by murder, gentleness absurdly existing while girls become crippled, while men with pride and authentic honor are hung from a crane in a square near a mosque where God's name is sung 5 times a day, where people hide their faces and have nothing left to say. I love her, it's true, but do I deserve to say I do? In a matter of days, I will board a plane, sending myself to a country where petty fights are mostly free, where I have the freedom to drink and drown my nerves of the disturbing nightmares of, is my wife even safe? In a matter of days, there will once again be a world between us, an ocean, 3 large deserts, the Red Sea and Persian Gulf, 3 entire continents, and our fears will return at the singing of God's name. I turned over on my side and I felt Nagar's lips. We turned off the television and eventually the lights. TVC 2022. Большое спасибо, miss. The 2 women in long dresses and headscarves took the warm foliage of fresh hachapuri with 2 hands and nodded as they frowned, stepping back against the stone wall that they had been leaning on across from the cone-roofed church. "It's okay, please, enjoy," Nagar said. "Spasiba, spasiba." "That was sweet," I said. "No, we don't need anything. We eat too much anyway. Look at your stomach." "Why? Don't look at me like that. I have a stomach too. They were hungry. They needed more than us." "It's a pretty night. You were so cute on that scooter." "I really want to buy a scooter for our home." Of course, John. And a BMW 42. She was wearing a cream leather jacket over a tan evening dress, short and tight, and black half-closed sandals with straps that coiled around her ankles and feet. She still had her hair pinned to form the wedding bun with two loose tresses, one at each of her temples and near the long silver earrings that dangled from her ears, but she had removed her wedding makeup and simplified it for dinner. The smile came and went. If only Mom could have been there, I knew she was thinking. The enormous white hot air balloon that docked in Riga Park was now mimicking the gibbous moon as it hovered high above us in the jet black sky. And I knew that who had just paid to be taken up must have been shivering and giggling and rubbing her elbows, leaning on her lover in complete excitement. As both stood overlooking the murky Mid-Kavari River and the Tilt Bridge of Peace with its flashing evening lights. Freedom Square, too, with its golden St. George, and the city lights of downtown towers with their jagged edges like broken glass, now appearing distant but remaining in sight, in the crisp open air and the purity of the sky, where love and security and freedom intertwine at the level of the stoic Cutlass Deda, guarding on her hillside, sword in hand, swearing maternal protection from any hostile invaders to the people in her city, her lovers, her fellow mothers, her starving beggars, her struggling bakers, her hotel clerks and wedding planners, serving all her complying visitors like her newlywed guests. Jacob, do you really think in America we can have that life we want? I promise you we can. As long as we stay alive and don't give up, we can have it. And then she kissed me, crossing the bridge of peace, returning to our temporary home in Georgia. Thank you.
Hello, that was beautiful. Thank you, Jacob. So I'm Karissa Ellison, and I'm going to be introducing Ryan Kenedy. Sorry, let me get my bearings here. He's a Fresno State MFA, one of our earliest graduates from the program, and he's also a fellow fiction writer like myself. And as I'm a relatively new alumna, I find it really inspiring how you were able to keep up with your writing and publish your debut novel. And you also have another one coming out. He has another one coming out in 2025, I hear. So that's very exciting. And I mean, I struggle with keeping up with my writing, so I find all of that very inspiring. Hopefully I can take after you. His debut novel, The Blameless, was published in 2023 by the University of Wisconsin Press, and it is an inspiring story of redemption and violence as these two characters, Travis and Virginia, embark on a kind of a collision course towards each other. Virginia is a hardworking single mother, newly divorced, to a young autistic son. And I found that her character was most relatable to me, as I'm also an English adjunct, as she is in the story. I also have children as well, and just her everyday struggles and frustrations I can definitely empathize with and understand. And also the pain and the loss that she feels from her father, the passing of her father. The other character, Travis, he's an ex-con, and he was actually convicted of murdering Virginia's father. So these two characters kind of embark on this journey towards each other, and what they find along the way is surprising and very good. It was very real to me. Ryan also has some short fiction, which has appeared in the North Dakota Review, North American Review, the Greensboro Review, and Southwestern, and among others. And his story collection, Don't Let Them Fall, is the forthcoming book in 2025, hopefully, fingers crossed, and from Johns Hopkins University Press. So if you could help me welcome Ryan.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for having me back. It's been a long time since I've been on campus, over 20 years. I was telling somebody, I saw Angela out in the hallway, that I wrote my first short story in 1993, and I published my first book in 2023, so 30 years before I two sections from Virginia's point of view, two brief sections. As the novel progresses, Virginia becomes more and more convinced that all the problems in her life are rooted in the death of her father, and so she starts to blame Travis Lee Hilliard for that. And when she finds out that he's been let out of prison, gradually she decides that she is going to confront him. So I'll read two sections. The first one comes a little after the halfway mark, and then the second one about 30 pages after that. They carried holstered revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, assault rifles with scopes and laser pointers. They held crates of ammunition to the firing line, hundreds of rounds, thousands, bullets designed to fragment and expand, rounds measured in millimeters and grains. Virginia found her assigned station at the far end of the firing line under the corrugated awning. A long table covered in soft green felt ran end to end. The rule was to shoot from behind the table. The targets were posted downrange under the sun. They sold them inside the office, the classic bullseye targets, the competition grids, the human silhouettes. Virginia purchased a 3-pack of paper targets, silhouettes of the male head and torso, and 2 boxes of full metal jacket cartridges. She brought her own pistol, clear plastic eyewear and yellow earplugs. It was not her first time on the firing line. She knew what to do, listen to the line officer, follow instructions. She could feel the wallop of gunfire in her chest as she loaded multiple cartridges into the magazine, the spring mechanism stiffening with pressure as she pressed down each bullet with her thumb. She liked cradling the bullets in the palm of her hand, the gravity of multiple rounds, the weight and substance of copper and lead, the brassy smell. The bullets seemed heavy, but the pistol felt light in her grip, even when it was fully loaded. She did not understand the laws of physics, the transfer of mass or the termination of opposing forces. What she understood was how perfectly the gun fit inside her hand. It was devised for her hand, or else her hand was devised for the gun, an adaptive strand of evolutionary logic. It was a simple design, ingenious, made of matte black polymer. The gun appeared toy-like. And she had decided after her first experience at the range that there was definitely something infantile about target shooting, the puerile astonishment of discharge and penetration. Her son never played with toy guns. 1, because she didn't buy them for him. 2, because Timothy wouldn't know how to play with it, how to pretend. So the gun as a concept made no sense. In his mind, the world was all shape and surface. The point of objects was to tap them for pleasure. The point of a hole was to plug it. Anyway, Virginia had an opinion on the subject of boys playing with guns. Perhaps if they were to grow out of it by age 10 or 12, okay, but that's not how it worked. Men grew into their guns. After buying her own handgun, she realized why it was true. There was a reason why men never gave up their guns. Or no, it was not reason in the truest sense. It was not rational. It had nothing to do with fear or protection or constitutional rights. It was intuitional. It was a visceral experience, formerly unknown to her. The perfect symmetry of palm and pistol, the trigger pull, an explosive shock that rattled the root ends of her teeth. Virginia owed this latest fascination to a former student, Kyle Knox, a guy in her composition class last fall who always wrote KKX on the sign-in roster. She knew from the first week of school he would be problematic. The way he looked, always a sneer on his face, a smart-ass remark to every question. All semester he mocked the reading assignments and made strange noises in class. He argued with Virginia. He belittled other students in conversation. He commandeered discussions with his extremist tirades, Kyle Knox. She gave him warnings and then told him to leave class. When he balked, she threatened to call campus police. And she did call campus police. They got involved. The dean got involved. Her colleagues on campus were incensed. Nevertheless, teaching had always been a lonely profession, particularly for the adjunct instructors who rarely spoke to anyone outside of class. In the morning, standing at the copy machine, her colleagues were sympathetic, but that was all. She even told Neil, the ex-husband, but what could he do? Nothing. She was alone in this. Kyle Knox disappeared for a week and then returned wearing his black trench coat, the racist comments, the vulgar gestures. Finally, middle of November, she had him permanently removed. Over the next 2 weeks, he sent her threatening emails, and one day she saw him on campus watching her leave class. Thanksgiving week, the day before the break, she found her front tire slashed. She called campus police to report the incident, but there was little they could do. They would look into it, of course, review the security footage, and they would provide an escort anytime she needed one. They were committed to her protection, they said. Virginia felt sick. What if Kyle Knox brought a gun into the classroom and killed everyone inside who matched the type? So she bought a gun of her own. Black Friday, found it on sale, a Glock 9mm with a box of Blazer hollow points. She told her story to the salesman behind the counter and was genuinely sympathetic, full of understanding. He wore his pistol on his hip and not just during business hours. Don't try to wound him, he said to Virginia. Never try to wound anyone. The message was clear. Kill the son of a bitch. But it had to be an act of self-defense, an open and shut case of defending your life. There was an application to complete, the federal background check. She waited 10 days before she could pick up the gun. Then she brought it to campus, fully loaded for the remainder of the term. She hid it in the zippered pocket of her book bag. At home, she practiced reaching into the bag. At school, during the final week of instruction, when there were no students in the room, she would drop behind the computer desk, unzip the middle pocket, and reach inside. She practiced the crouch in her skirt, wearing heels. In the event of Kyle Knox, she would do it like this. She would use the desk as cover. From behind the desk, she would fire across the room. On the overhead speaker, the line officer gave instructions to cease fire, to clear all weapons. Guns on the table, open and unloaded, chambers empty, magazines on the bench, muzzles pointed downrange. They all marched out together, a cohort of 20 or 30 shooters advancing toward the targets. Between firing sessions, the shooters had several minutes to examine their performance and to remove or attach targets to the frames as necessary. Virginia went out with them to clip her silhouettes in place 25 feet away. It was hot under the sun. The dry hills surrounding the range were treeless and white. On another section of the range where they shot high-powered rifles, she could see 200 or 300 feet in the distance puffs of dry white smoke, little whiffs of cloudy dirt where the bullets penetrated the embankments. She returned to her station and waited until the line officer gave order to commence firing. Then the air exploded with sound and power, the percussive force of war marching through her vital organs, vibrating bone and brain matter. Virginia raised her pistol, aimed at the shadow target downrange, fired once, then fired a few more times, 3 quick knocks against the target. She fired at the chest and at the head. She'd heard this phrase repeated in a movie, 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. She couldn't remember which movie, didn't know the context, didn't care to know. What she liked was the rhythm of 8 perfect syllables, 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. She aimed the gun and fired a series of 3 rounds, 2 in the chest, brief pause, 1 in the head, then did it again, repeating the 3-shot sequence until the magazine was empty. The pistol lay flat on the green felt as she reloaded the magazine. She would have to pace herself. There was no category on her budget sheet for bullets. Money would be tight for the remainder of the month. Summers were the worst. They were the leanest months, and this summer she was scheduled to teach only 1 course. She would need more money, more financial support. She would have to talk to Neil about that. Her opportunities were diminishing. During the next sequence, she aimed with careful precision before firing. The goal was to identify an area on the target, the heart, for example, or the middle forehead, and create a tight grouping of 6 or 7 bullet holes within a 2-inch diameter. If she pulled the trigger too hard or too fast, she was off the mark. But when the trigger gave on its own unexpectedly, her shot was more accurate. She could do it when she focused, when she relaxed, breathing in and out, she held her aim until the gun fired. She learned this about accuracy, that it required the steady flow of oxygen and precise visual acuity. If she held her breath, or she stared too long at the target without blinking, her aim was off. The thing to do was relax, breathe easy, let the gun do all the work. After 100 rounds, it was over. She picked up the brass casings by the handful and tossed them into an orange bucket. She trashed the empty ammunition cartons, the paper silhouettes ravaged with holes, shoulders torn away, eyes ripped through, head and heart massacred. She was searching for a particular road, rough and unpaved, a dirt road somewhere off the main highway between Joshua Tree and 29 Palms. She was no longer following the map on her cell phone, which placed her in the middle of an incomprehensible void. If only she could give the phone to her son and say, "Here, figure this out for me." But that was something else she would never experience, the pleasures of passing it off to the kid. Timothy was belted into his booster seat, asleep in the back of the car. If the car was in motion, he traveled well. The car was a closed container. What he did not like were stops of any kind, doors opening and closing, or any of his mother's demands. In the car, he would hold his pee for hours. When she stopped for food, he would not go to the bathroom, and he would not eat what she offered. On the road, he slept like a space traveler in a sealed capsule, outside of time, never aging. Occasionally, Virginia might say something to him, a word meant to rouse him from deep sleep. But Timothy would not stir. Whatever people dreamed about before language entered the world, that's what he dreamed. It was August, and the summer session had ended. Virginia graded final papers, posted final grades. Then one of her fall classes got canceled for low enrollment, and there was none to replace it. She was left with 2 classes now, 2 sections of remedial composition offered on separate campuses for less than $1,800 a month after taxes. Neil was right. There were too many debts, not enough money. She would have to find another job. On short notice, she would pull out of her fall classes to free up her days. Either they would find late replacements, others to teach her courses, or they would cancel both sections, leaving her students stranded. So be it. There was no loyalty at stake. No one was loyal. In the schedule of classes, Virginia was not even listed as the instructor of record. It said only staff. And staff members, the part-timers, remained nameless because they were expendable. But what did it matter? She had never wanted to teach basic writing anyway. Too much resistance, too much bad feeling. What she wanted, or once wanted, was to teach Keats and Coleridge to happy undergraduates in the Northeast where the leaves changed color every fall and snow settled quietly over the quad. But where that vision came from, that deceiving dream, where that version of self-fulfillment originated, Virginia could not say. She knew the brick and ivy were backdrop, mere fantasy, an evasion of the facts. Like waiting for Timothy to speak, waiting for him to utter a single word, as though the word, like a crust of bread, could somehow satisfy a withered appetite. Unreal desires, impossible demands. They led inexorably to this bizarre moment in time, a woman with a loaded gun, a raven croaking for revenge. It had taken weeks, months, before his name surfaced on the web. Every morning and evening, she opened the bookmarks on her laptop computer, searched the man's name, scrolled through the results. She used different search engines to find him, and what she found finally was a real estate transaction with his name on it, a legal notification, a public announcement buried in a database of fictitious business names and bankruptcies. From there, it was not hard to pinpoint his exact location. She typed the address, clicked the satellite view, and hovered over a white rectangular structure, a trailer or a mobile home. All her life, she had pictured him a certain way, a man from the past who never changed, never grew older. And now she was determined to see him face to face, to find out what becomes of a man, what 3 decades of imprisonment looks like. She hoped to find the figure of ruin, the face of wasted days. But first she had to find the place. There were roads on either side of the highway, and many of them were unmarked, perpendicular roads that unraveled like lengths of yellow rope. So they were lost, or at least Virginia was, being the adult, the driver, the person at the wheel. Timothy was never lost. It was something she envied. To be lost required a destination, and this necessitated a plan. Timothy did not plan. He was wayward, a wayward child, but only because he didn't know there was a way to be found, and so he was free from having to search for it. She pulled off at the next road, stopping long enough to read the names on the mailboxes. Then she turned around and drove back the other way. Her feeling was that she had passed the turn some time ago. It was all expanse to her now, these level distances, the broken horizon. Everywhere she looked, she saw the same scrawny bushes blowing in the wind, the barren exteriors of land and sky, the shattered fragments of chalk-white rock. There were houses off the main road, broken down shacks painted in vacant shades of pink and green and boarded up with plywood, spray painted, gutted, thrashed by the local kids, crusted with glass. And then she saw it, a road sign, not more than 3 feet high, nearly hidden on the side of the road, like one of those crosses that appear along the highway, marking the loss of life. She slowed onto the dirt road, examined a row of mailboxes, and found the name spelled out in reflective lettering, T.L. Hilliard. It was late afternoon. A white, dusty road lay ahead, the road to his place. When she touched the back of her hand to the window, she could feel the abysmal heat outside the car. Timothy was awake, right now, suddenly. She caught him staring at her in the rearview mirror, wide-eyed, gluey lips. He was looking right at her as though he had something important to reveal. "What is it?" she said. "Whatever you have for me, tell me, I want to know." In the car, with the doors locked, dust blowing, the mailboxes shaking, the car wobbling in the wind. "If you say it, we'll go home," she said. "We'll turn the car around and go home." Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming. It is my honor to introduce my friend Angie. Angie and I, we can't, how would I say this? Can't be any more different. She loves math. I flunked it twice. She's a good dancer, amazing dancer. A girlfriend once told me I danced like a drowning fish. But there is one thing that we have in common. We both were born and grew up in third world countries. She in Bakersfield, I in the Philippines. But it's what I call grist to the poet's mill. That's one thing we have in common. Poetry. I believe poets are anachronisms. Think about it. Poets in the time of TikTok, the Hawktail Girl, Trump Bibles. And if we lived in the 17th century, Angie and I, we would be rock stars. And you guys will be paying a bushel of corn and 2 chickens just to hear us read. But there's something that I remember so much about Angie's poetry, and it stayed with me for years. When she was reading a Larry Levis poem, those of you who don't know Larry Levis, read him. He's an amazing present poet. So when she was reading a Larry Levis poem inside the coffee house, she came across the line, "Perhaps the ankle of the horse is holy." She was so moved that by the time she got to the end of the poem, her eyes were welling up. I never really understood this until, like all good things, they come to a close. I finally get it. In one of her poems, she writes about a horse she had when she was little. If you would indulge me for just a few more seconds, I'd like to read a few lines from that poem that made me believe in a sort of love that we can still experience in the world. I believe she calls this some kind of glow. JT was a horse with feet so big he blocked the sun. He left my mama with the kindest words she ever said to me. The last thing he knew in the world was that a girl with brown eyes loved him and kissed his nose. There is something about living outside the expectations of other people that is liberating. You will experience this and hear this in Angie's poetry about herself, about her gritty mama, Mrs. Peacock, and yes, the glow of love. So it is my honor to introduce to you my good friend, the poet, the wonderful Angela Chaidez Vincent.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'm delighted to be at a homecoming of sorts back at Fresno State, and so especially delighted that one of my most important teachers, Connie Hales, is here. I definitely would not be a fraction of the writer that I've managed to become so far without Connie. I'm so delighted that she's here today. My book is Arena Glow, and the arenas refer to rodeo arenas, the arenas that I felt myself in as an engineering student and later as an engineer and being the only woman in the place. Also the arena that I found myself in coming out in midlife after I was already married to a man and having to navigate that. In fact, Connie remembers because that was right at the end of my MFA. And I wanted this to be a song to badass women, and also what makes that possible, which is some of the violence, some of the difficulty underneath it. I'm going to read poems about rodeos. I'm going to start with one called Contestant's Gate. I'll never think of thumbs as truly fastened, not when I've seen so many sighs severed in Pepsi cups, rushed over from the snack bar by the arena, thumbs preserved in crystal lattice of ice cubes, bending backward toward the road to hitch a ride in the ambulance. Have you seen those exploded view drawings of engines? My God, I love unrolling those prints on a drafting table, marveling at the bolt choir suspended in air like ghostly candlesticks, flickering with remnants of a vital kabam. Often it was my job to jump the fence and hunt for the lopped off thumb, caught in the dally, in the rope they wound around the saddle horn. But even dust clouds settle down. That's usually when it appears, the moon inside a nail bed, atop the softest pillow of earth. It's all right, they can sew it back on. My upbringing, as Mike refers to Bakersfield as a third world country, we very much had a policy of, no blood, no problem. I don't even know how I'm standing here. There was a lot of blood, by the way. My next piece is called Midway, and I found myself writing this book with the unique problem of taking 20 years, not quite 30, but 20 years to finish it, and finding that I had become such a drastically different person from the person who wrote some of the earlier poems that I still liked, but I no longer felt as aligned with. And so I solved the problem by giving different eras to different women of the game Clue. So Miss Scarlet is the younger 20s, 30s. Mrs. Peacock is the middle-aged, probably about close to where I'm at right now. And then Mrs. White is the timeless woman we all aspire to be. This one is called Midway, so I would say this is a Mrs. Peacock poem. Midway, this is not a halfway point, rather a calling across a stadium in fog, between the eyebrows that don't understand the markings on the field between them. Grass grows high above the yard lines as if in a race with the junipers that line the path we walk to the goalpost. I'm gonna tie the tops together for an arch. All these grasses. It would take my whole life to knot the tops together over me. I think I've made a church big enough for all of us, light-filled, unruly. And I remember hearing pink and green in Ryan's piece, and I'm gonna read a poem that also contains pink and green to answer that echo from our earlier reading. Both Jacob and Ryan, thank you so much. I really enjoyed both readings so much. This is called Miss Scarlet, When She First Knew, my coming out poem. If my name were really Scandal, I'd find it easier to meet your gaze, to sit with you in a cloud of tissue paper at a shoe store as we try on high-heeled boots. From the neon martini sign across the street, glints of pink and green sparkle in the eyelets on the pair you lace tightly and admire in the mirror. I found a name for you too. It's Rain, surprisingly soft and rightly containing the cold, the invigoration, the strange sound of applause that follows you everywhere. Lately, I find myself staring too long at the weather page and its forecast of storms, dark gray clouds that come off on my fingers and everything else that I touch. Last night, I saw your face in condensation streaming down a midnight glass of water by the bed. On the window, a crack in the shape of a bowl holds the moon as delicately as I hold my breath tonight, transfixed by a single drop of water shivering on the doorknob in the moment before it knows which way to fall. I have a poem that's become one of my favorites. It's about pancakes. I love pancakes. I love them. And maybe perhaps it's because we're on the road so much, and definitely having to stop at lots of McDonald's, and while my mom would go out 3 or 4 rodeos a weekend, and so we ate a lot on the road. So getting pancakes was just like eyes rolling back happiness, which I think I've brought forward with me. This is called Ode to IHOP on Fresno Street. The lovely server Ambi pours coffee without looking at the cup, daydreaming a moment, and I'm not hearing my thanks, but seconds later, as an afterthought, you're welcome, babe. IHOPs are for confectionery names. Here you are, honey, sweetie, or sugar pie. Here you don't need your other names. So unfurl that taped up napkin like the flag of a just republic, and get that mostly clean silverware in hand. Let your heart fill with mug clinks, plate clinks, and tell me, how is everything tasting? You've been on the other side of the counter, no? Late at night, smushing burgers with a spatula, spirit smushed likewise. Don't eat out late at night. They're exhausted, the beautiful beings behind the counter. Catch them rather in the morning. Catch them when we're all a touch closer to the dream. My next poem is dedicated to my younger sister, Katie. It's called How to Roll a Sleeping Bag. Revolve air, roll back, unroll, unwind, to happen again, for Kate. Step 1, flatten sleeping bag, zip closed. Step 2, fold lengthwise in half. Think hot dog versus hamburger at the state line bar. Step 3, starting at open end, kneel facing absence of sleeping bag, inches from the edge. Form a tight roll. Step 4, scoot back 4 inches, roll toward you as if to grip the playground bar for forbidden cherry drop while the teacher ties her shoe. Step 5, scoot back, roll toward you as if to wrap your tongue around a dumbbell to train it not to drop an extra L in the word falling in the county spelling bee. Step 6, roll toward you as if ringing shadow of shark from distant wave. Scoot back, and step 7 to the end, roll toward you as if to hang glide to Midnight Highway in Arkansas, as if to hold tight to bumper of your sister's Jeep before her husband purples her eye, her arm, her leg, before he locks her in God-forsaken shack with no food, no water, before he runs her into tree, before she never walks again, before you find 2-foot get well card from fucker who did this, shaped like big red heart. I'm going to read one that appears in 4 parts, 4 short poems. I always felt that rodeos were, they had kind of an interruptive quality, because it's like, we have rodeo, which is real life, and then we have to go to work and go to school, blah, 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 and then we get back to our real life again. So I put rodeo poems, I stopped them in mid-poem and then continued them. So I'm going to read a couple of those. Rodeo Arena 1. A sorrel mare named Dottie crashes to her side, but not before my barrel racer mama kicks her boot free of the stirrup, quick thinking that probably saves her leg. The announcer leans into the mic and says, "All this little lady will take home tonight is your applause. Let's help her to her feet." The crowd claps and whistles as she hobbles to the gate. When she trots up again in the midnight slack, in a fresh pair of peach-hued rocky jeans, bandana stuffed in her mouth to soak up any more upstart blood, the announcer bites his styrofoam cup, leaving half-open corrals for a pair of mismatched thoughts. 1, hang it up before you get killed. But also, 2, that's right, get back on. We don't throw entry fees away. She's back for more, but what happens to the others, to the scared away? Is there a reverse magnetism? But what happens to the others, to the scared away? Is there a reverse magnetism in which the arena gate, pulled open by some kid with a long rope, bounces out those who aren't worthy, like those gates in the movie Never Ending Story, at which the sphinxes laser you to a pile of smoking rubble if you attempt to pass through without believing in yourself? I will never pass. I will never pass a rodeo announcer's booth and not think that's where the voice of God comes from. A plywood shack on stilts from which they call the Times, stuff the payout envelopes, and shiver in the hellish glow of a space heater, 3 horsehairs from shorting out. I'll never cease to hunger for hazard perfume. And I'd like to end with one more dedicated to my lovely wife, Lisa. This is called Welcome. Lisa is an amazing songwriter and guitar player, and we often give each other challenges. So she'll say, you have to write a poem with these random words in it, and I'll say, haha, you have to write a song with the word flashlight and make it sound good. And so this is a result of a poem that she assigned to me called Welcome. For Lisa. Deep is the glow of latent heat, folded at the corner of the sheet, silken page to which we promise to return. As a way to St. Francis, a finch imagines sweet rest, but hesitates to land complete, for she fears, her offbeat wings will surely crack his wrist. And then, deep is the glow of Providence, the sunlit street, away on lucky rabbit's feet. Our hearts, the damp dark finches that hover in and heat the wilderness. We resist, and yet, intrigued, deep is the glow. Thank you so much for being here.